Welcome, folks. Glad everyone is here on the call. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to flip it over to my colleague, Mark Schaefer, a regional organizer, to get you all involved in what we have in store for you today. And it is an incredible call we have for you today. Some latest information on what's happening in DC and how you're going to be able to join a road trip. So, Mark, you want to take over here?
Yeah, sure, Dwayne. Hey, everyone. Glad to have you all here. We're going to have a variety of updates today, but first thing I wanted to do is have everyone just throw in the chat your name, where you're from, are you coming on our bus trip? And if so, are you taking the bus or are you going by yourself? All those details will help us get an idea of where people are coming from, what their connection is to the bus trip, or if you're just here to learn more about the federal policy action call. We're going to have a few speakers today, and they'll set the floor for what's going on nationally, and then our bus trip will give you all an opportunity to voice your concerns about it. I'm already seeing some answers in the chat. Thank you, everyone. And as people continue to come in, we'll just continue to update those.
Awesome. I am so excited about this. Gosh, people are coming from all over the country to join us in DC for this rally. And so glad that people are joining. And if you haven't heard anything about this rally, don't worry. We'll get you up to speed so that you can join us with a huge group, a huge constituent group from Pennsylvania going down to this rally. So, we might as well, at this point, glad everyone is here. Glad you're joining us. Let's flip this over and set the table. There's a reason why we're all here. And so I'm going to flip it over to the executive director of the Pennsylvania Policy Center, Mark Steer, kind of set the table for us about what's been happening and why we are all gathered here today. Mark?
Thanks, Dwayne. Good to see everyone here. I see a lot of faces and names of people who've been joining us, in some cases for years on these calls. And I see many new people who I know are motivated by our big concerns about what's going on with Trump's economic tax policies. As you know, our federal Fight Back campaign has been heavily focused on stopping Trump and the Republican Party's effort to take away our health care and our food assistance, to make deep cuts in Medicaid and SNAP in order to pay for an extension and expansion of the Trump tax cuts of 2017. And as I'm sure all of you know, those tax cuts were heavily weighted to the people at the very top, to ultra-rich people and to wealthy corporations who don't need any help. And as I'm sure you also know from reading the stuff we've been sending you over the last couple of months, those tax cuts did nothing to help the economy. They did not increase investment. They did not increase economic growth. What they did is led to a lot of stock buybacks and higher after-tax incomes for very wealthy people. We have a couple of great people who are going to talk about the state of play in Washington, about where we are, and what we can be doing to make sure that we stop or at least make this plan less bad. We have John Foti from Americans for Tax Fairness, and who's going to join us, and then we have Lloyd from Fair Share America, who's going to talk about the big effort we're going to make bringing people to Washington, D.C. I want to take like 2 minutes to talk about one other thing that may be on your minds for some reason. Maybe tariffs. You may have heard about that, and about what Trump is planning. It's almost unbelievable to say, but between 2 days ago and today, Trump's economic policy has gotten worse. His efforts to redistribute income from working people to the very richest people in our country have gotten bolder. Now, look, tariffs, as we point out in previous calls, tariffs can be a useful economic tool used strategically. But what Trump is proposing is an average tariff of about 30%, which is higher than the Smoot-Hawley tariff of the 1930s, which was only 20%, and that led to the Great Depression. We're looking at a proposal that in the aggregate is going to create great inflation and at the same time possibly lead us into a recession. And that Smoot-Hawley tariff was put in place when international trade was only about 4.5% of our gross domestic product. Right now it's 14.6%. So it's a higher tariff that's going to have a much bigger impact on our economy. And as far as we're talking about in terms of tax fairness, it's going to raise taxes by $6 trillion over 10 years. And that's in addition to the 5 point something billion tax cut that the Republicans want to put in place. Now, a tariff is a tax on consumption. Working people put more of their money into spending because they don't have a lot to save. Rich people save a bunch of the money. So tariffs are not only a huge tax on working people, but they're a regressive tax that hit people with low incomes harder than hit people in the middle and harder than hit people at the top. So on the one hand, we have tax cuts that go overwhelmingly to the richest people. On the other hand, we have a big tax increase that falls overwhelmingly on working people and those who are poor. And at the same time, we're going to see costs rise dramatically. We already know we have a problem with the cost of housing, healthcare, childcare, and education. But while those have been going up, at least a lot of other goods have been going down in price. Computers, relatively speaking, go down in price. That's partly because of global competition. Now we're going to end that. Those prices are going to go up too. That's going to lead to an incredible increase in prices across the board and a drop in economic activity. This is an incredibly crazy plan that will only benefit the wealthiest people in the United States. And frankly, it's not going to benefit them right away either, because it's going to create an economic disaster for all of us. But ultimately, it's in their benefit. It's not in the benefit for the rest of us. So that is the background for what we're going to talk about today. We're going to focus on the stopping this tax cut, stopping the cuts to Medicaid and SNAP, and how we all can be effective in doing that, in part by taking a little bus trip next week. So I'm going to stop here, turn it back to Dwayne, and we'll continue with the rest of the program.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for that update. Yeah, I mean, you can't, I don't know, it's impossible not to hear about these tariffs, but thinking about how that's an extra tax cut on combining that with the tax cuts for the wealthy on top of the tax burden on everyday people is a double hit. So, but what I'm really excited to do now is introduce John Foti with Americans for Tax Fairness to give us the latest update on what's happening in DC around our budget. And I'm sure you have a lot of news because things were really busy this week and they continue to be. So John, without anything further, I'd like for you to introduce yourself and let the folks know what's happening.
Thanks so much, Dwayne, and really appreciate the friends at Penn Policy Center for inviting me on to be on this call today to talk a little bit about what's going on in DC. And just to say, my name is John Foti. I'm the Deputy Executive and Legislative Director at Americans for Tax Fairness. I live in Washington, D.C., and I spend all my waking hours working on tax policy, trying to fight for a tax system that works better for working people and for those who grew up in less better circumstances than billionaires and big corporations. So really excited for you all for taking time out of your busy day to have this conversation. And just to say, I spent some time in the Downingtown, Pennsylvania area and lived there for quite a while and come from a family of caregivers. So I saw some folks drop in the chat that they themselves are family caregivers. So just know that your story and what you do resonates with me. And I appreciate you for the work that you do for your family and your community. But as Dwayne said, there is a massive legislation moving through Congress right now that the president and Republicans in Congress are trying to pass as quickly as possible before anyone notices the changes that they are trying to enact. And as Mark noted in his remarks, Republicans right now are looking at a bill that would give $5 trillion worth of tax cuts, mostly going to the wealthy, while cutting nearly $2 trillion, the majority of which will come from Medicaid and SNAP, as well as other changes to other really important programs. They're going to raise costs on student loan borrowers. They are going to likely make it more difficult for cities to be able to borrow money in order to improve their roads, bridges, and support their communities. And as Mark rightly pointed out, the announcement on tariffs yesterday is intentional. They are planning to use the money that all of us are going to pay in higher prices on goods and services, and use that to fund their tax breaks for the wealthy. So in total, this week, the Senate is going to be voting on this framework that is going to give massive, massive tax cuts to the already wealthy. And we saw this in 2017 during the first Trump administration. It was the biggest priority then, and it remains their biggest priority now. And if you're wondering, what do these tax cuts for the wealthy look like? They are going to lower marginal rates for folks who are making well over $1 million a year. They are going to make it cheaper or lower, have better tax cuts for folks who invest for a living rather than those who work for a living. So if you're a hedge fund manager or if you're Michael Bloomberg, you are looking to get a tax cut in some cases as high as 14, 15%. Whereas for the rest of us, we are looking at getting a tax increase that is going to raise prices and take away at minimum $300 a year of our dollars away in order to fund maintaining this tax regime that primarily benefits the wealthy and big corporations. And even worse, there are a lot of folks in the administration right now who are saying, who cares if folks are going to be paying higher prices at the grocery store? We're going to give these tax cuts for billionaires, and then that'll trickle down to the rest of everyone else, and then we will be able to, and then that'll somehow make the economy better. But as we've noticed, every single time a tax cut bill has passed, Republicans always come back and try to cut programs or social services that the rest of us pay into and rely on in order to support our communities. And that's the other thing, just to underscore here. We're not talking about waste, fraud, and abuse when we talk about the cuts that are being proposed. We are talking very clearly about benefit cuts, kicking people off of Medicaid that they have paid for, kicking people off of food assistance and ripping food away from children, all to pay for tax cuts for billionaires. And so in this moment, we're really, really need to make sure that your representatives, whether they are a Republican or a Democrat, are hearing from you about how you will be impacted, about how your families will be impacted, because they are doing their best to not hear your complaints, hear your concerns, or hear your questions. Just to say, a couple of weeks ago, House Republican leadership in DC told their Republican representatives to stop holding town halls because people were getting too angry with them about their plans. And in my opinion, if people are angry with you about your plans need to change, not you need to stop hearing from people. So in many ways, this is the reason why we are so excited about all of you who are going to be coming to DC next week. Again, and I can't thank you enough in advance for taking time out of your busy schedule, knowing full well that there are people in your family and your communities who rely on you. And so you taking time out of your day to come and make your voice heard is going to have a tremendous impact. The good thing I'll say is you do have representatives who are there and who are fighting this battle. Representative Boyle, who is the ranking member of the Budget Committee, he has been fighting up and arguing against this legislation. And has been very clear that there are ways we can provide tax relief for workers and families that do not require giving tax cuts for billionaires. And if you have a Republican representative who is saying, well, how are we going to afford all of this? How are we going to afford tax cuts for middle-class families if we don't do this bill? The simple answer to that is don't give tax cuts to rich people. Republicans could actually basically zero out the cost of their bill if they simply said that no business or individual who makes over $400,000 a year, the wealthiest of the wealthy, doesn't get a tax cut. If those folks don't get a tax cut, their bill zeroes out and doesn't cost anything, and then we could avoid all those harmful cuts to Medicaid and SNAP as well. And even worse, one thing just to say, which is there were some good things that were done in the 2017 tax law. The child tax credit comes to mind. But the concerning thing is Republicans are actually talking talking about rolling back their own progress that they made on the child tax credit and restricting even further families and children from being able to access it by creating more paperwork and more red tape for people to have to fill out in order to be able to access benefits that the government already knows they qualify and are owed. And so, in many ways, this is sort of the cynicism behind this agenda. Sometimes some of the things they're talking about aren't necessarily direct benefit cuts, but they're talking about making folks fill out another form or have to call another person or have to have another conversation in order to be able to get the things that the government knows that they're owed and deserve. And so we don't want that. We don't want more red tape in your way as you're trying to support your families. We want to make sure that we're doing things like expanding the child tax credit, investing in your communities, and investing in workers rather than giving tax cuts to billionaires and corporations. So all that is to say is the Senate is possibly going to vote on this legislation, this framework to do this plan tomorrow evening on a Friday night. So while I hope many of you are planning some great weekend activities with your families, there's a potential that Republicans are going to try to be voting to take away your health care at that very moment that you're planning some fun weekend activities with your children and or your families. So the one thing I would say is now is the time to make a phone call to your senator or your member of Congress and say, I don't agree with this plan and I don't want you to vote for it. And because you're ultimately the people who they work for, whether you voted for that member of Congress or not, they are sent to Washington, D.C. to represent the rest of us. And they need to hear your voice now more than ever. Because while there are folks like Hannah and myself who are fighting in D.C. daily to make sure that Republican representatives are listening to you, you're the people who matter the most, the people who either sent them here or who live in their district and who will be most impacted by the decisions that they're going to make. So with that, happy to take any questions if folks have them. But just again, a big appreciation for Dwayne and the rest of the Penn Policy crew for inviting me to be on the call today.
Thank you so much for that, John. And yeah, this is a good point that you gave us a lot of information there. I also dropped in the chat a very easy way for you to sign a petition and send a letter instantly to your members of Congress, both senators and also your representative in your congressional district. Just click that link there. It's an Action Network link. You know the drill. Now's the time to do this because of what's at stake and what John just told us is happening right now. So please go ahead and do that. And I see that Freda has her. Hi, Freda. Good to see you. If you could come off of mute and ask your question of John, let's do that.
I'll have to request that she's able to come off of mute. Right now we have it set up so participants aren't able to unmute themselves just so we don't have any noisy background stuff. So hang on one sec.
There we go. I think you should be good, Freda.
Okay. Hi. So what is the actual name of the bill that we're talking about? And can you point us to where in the bill? So what you're saying is that we want people over 400,000 a year don't get a tax break, but where in the bill does it talk about the tax breaks? And is there something in a bill specifically about Medicaid yet that we can point to?
Yeah, Freda, great question. And on the name of the bill, this is where I don't have a good answer. It is H-Con Res 14. It does not have a name. And I would also say that is one of the frustrating things. And it also goes to show you how even in some circles for Republicans, this is unpopular because normally good bills that the administration is pushing has a name. Even the previous bill had a name. I imagine it will at some point. But one thing I would just say is if you call it the Senate budget resolution, your representative will know what you're talking about. The other thing I would say on the tax cut piece is while it's not written into this bill itself, every single Republican from the president to Leader Thune to Speaker Johnson has said that making the Trump tax cuts permanent are their primary goal in this bill. And so we're taking them at their word. And so when we say this bill is going to give tax cuts for billionaires, it is going to give people making over 400K most of the benefits, that all comes from the 2017 law, the Trump tax bill that they passed, and what analysis shows it would do if we take Republicans at their word that they want to make that bill permanent. And then the other thing I would say on your question about Medicaid, which is you're right, there technically aren't any cuts in this budget resolution. However, because you have at least one phenomenal representative, Brendan Boyle, who is the head of the Budget Committee, he requested the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office to say, can you look at this number and tell me, is this number achievable without cutting Medicaid? And the Congressional Budget Office, again, a nonpartisan office that serves both parties when they are in power, said there is no way for congressional Republicans to reach that $880 billion target without making significant benefit cuts to Medicaid or Medicare. And so, again, we have to sort of we have to try to get past their noise and say, look, your leadership has said this is what they're going to do. The nonpartisan scorekeepers, the referees, if you will, have said this is what you're going to do. The only thing we can do is take them at their word that that is what their plan is going to do. And again, if one of the things we've heard very commonly is that a lot of Republicans right now are just saying, well, we just want to get the process moving along. We don't think this will be the end result. And I don't know about you all, but I don't agree to doing anything if I don't know where I'm going to end up going. So in many ways, we just have to tell them, say, look, if you're opposed to Medicaid cuts, then tell your leadership that you want to vote on a bill that makes it very clear there will be no cuts to Medicaid. And they could do that very easily by zeroing that out. They could even the senators could do that tomorrow. They could simply pass an amendment to their bill that says no cuts to Medicaid from this framework, and that would suffice and achieve that goal. And just to say, there are several Senate Democrats who plan to also offer amendments doing those very same things. So Republicans will have the opportunity to say, yeah, we don't want millionaires getting tax cuts, we don't want cuts to Medicaid, and we don't want cuts to SNAP. And they could adopt those amendments, and that would basically mean if they're not planning to do that already, they should have no problem voting for those amendments, restricting their future ability to do so. So again, I understand that is wrapped up in a lot of DC legislative sometimes nonsense, but at the same time, we also don't want your elected leaders to obfuscate what they're doing by hiding behind some of those procedural things.
Great. Thank you, Freda and John, for that explanation. There's a few questions in the chat. I'll just point to Nancy. Yes. So the script you can send in addition. If you just click on the letter on the petition, you'll be able to see the language. It's right there, and you can copy and paste that and use it how you will. But it's pretty simple. Don't cut Medicaid and SNAP in order to give billions of dollars to billionaires. I mean, it's that straightforward, and that's what's really happening there, and that has to kind of cut through. John, did you have any other comments on that?
Yeah, Dwayne, and I apologize. Someone private messaged me and asked a question, and I don't want to say their name just in case this, because it is a personal question. But they asked that they have a relative in a nursing home who's receiving Medicaid, and they're curious how Medicaid cuts could affect their care. I just want to say to this person, my heart goes out to you and your family because that is tremendously difficult to deal with. My uncle, who also lives in Pennsylvania, is also chair-bound and relies on Medicaid and Social Security disability insurance as well. So my heart goes out to you personally. And then on Medicaid cuts, I'm going to be honest, I don't have a good answer for you. It could mean that they end up losing access to some or all of their care, potentially even the providers who they're used to dealing with and familiar with. Just to say, that is one of the things about these Medicaid cuts. It will be a 1-2 gut punch. Not only will folks likely lose access to the services that they rely on, but there are also many workers and caregivers who are likely to lose their jobs. I think there is a statistic, I don't have it in front of me, but I bet a good chunk of rural hospitals and rural healthcare networks rely on Medicaid to fund their caregiver networks. And Medicaid is one of the largest funders of family caregivers and folks who get many of their job funding and support paid through Medicaid, even if they work for a private employer. So all that is to say is this is not just about the services people are receiving, but this is also about the folks who are doing this work, who are serving probably many of your family members and many of your communities. So that is the other thing about these cuts that it will do. Not just folks will lose access to the services, but also there may be less workers around to be able to care for folks. And I don't know about many of you all, it's not like our healthcare system has too many workers right now. In many ways, we're already facing a deficit of workers and folks who want to go into the healthcare field, especially post-COVID, and the strain that was put on all of our nursing homes. So this could have a devastating, real impact, not just on the services that many of us rely on, but on the workers who are there to provide it.
Great. Thank you, John. Also in the chat, if you want to look there, Mark Steer also dropped the letter that was addressed to Chairman Boyle for his question, so you can actually see the language that was used there. And just something I want to lift up. Many times people get confused between Medicare and Medicaid, and it can be very confusing. And I like to think of these in keeping it straight in my head, that these are safety net programs, right? Like Medicaid and SNAP are safety nets, which is meant for everyone on this call. This is ours. In any moment, you can lose your health insurance for whatever reason. Maybe you had a terrible accident. Maybe you lost your job. And then all of a sudden, you need Medicaid, and that's what it's there for. It's there for us. That's what they're talking about taking away, our safety net for all of us. As a kid, I was on Medicaid. I know my family was. I got food stamps. I was on SNAP. That was the equivalent back then. But the average time that someone's on that is in Pennsylvania is only about 3 years. And at some point, 60 to 65% of the people on this call are on it. So they're taking that away from us in order to funnel that money up to the top, to the ultra wealthy, to billionaires. And so that's an easy way to kind of talk about it in just very plain language, very plain terms, to kind of unravel what it is. Because I think when you hear the word Medicaid, you're not thinking that that's mine. And it is. It's ours. This is our safety net. It is what is guaranteed to us through what's existing in that program. And we may need that someday. And I don't like someone messing with that. And I don't think anyone on this call does as well. So if you can say that to your member of Congress and to your senators, right, and to your reps, that's going to go a long way. In addition to lifting up the fact that 70% in Pennsylvania in nursing homes are on Medicaid, right? Like they've received that funding. So anyway, I don't want to go any further on that. We could spend all the time there, but we have an exciting way of reaching out. We have an event happening on the 10th for those that have not heard. We have buses that are going to be running from Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. We have a NEPA bus, Northeast Pennsylvania, that's going to be in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, and Allentown. We have another one more central that's going to be going from Bloomsburg. Shout out to the Bloomsburg crowds who lobbied to get their own bus, Bloomsburg to Harrisburg and down to DC. And we have Hannah Lloyd with Fair Share America. If you can introduce yourself, Hannah, and give us the latest detail on what this is looking like in Washington for April 10th. Hannah?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Hannah Lloyd. I am with Fair Share America. We work really closely with Dwayne and Mark and members of Penn Policy and Pennsylvanians together. And it's really nice to see you all. And I'm excited by the chat because it looks like we're going to have the pleasure to see so many of you all in person next week. So Dwayne's going to talk a little bit more about logistics, I believe, right after me. But do want to just kind of lift up a couple of really cool things and reasons we're excited about this rally. One, most importantly, as has now been demonstrated in the chat through Foti, through Dwayne, through Mark, we need to tell our elected officials that this is not okay. I was thinking, Dwayne, while you were speaking, for a long, long time, people tried to make the word entitlement like a dirty thing, like how dare these people like it's like, yeah, no, we are entitled. These are things that are ours that we have paid into, and we're all just one catastrophic situation or unexpected development away from needing these services. So I'm so it brings me great joy to know that so many of you all will be going to Washington next week to carry that message. So anyways, we have a rally next Thursday, right around this time. We'll be rallying at 12 o'clock Eastern. We're going to be having our rally outside of the US Capitol. We're going to send around a map so that folks can see where, but you're going to be joined by, and this is what is so exciting, we have folks that we know of at least right now from 32 different states around the country, everywhere from Washington to Texas to Maine to Florida and in between. Large delegations of other bus crews are coming from New York and New Jersey, VA. So really, really excited to all converge for this rally next Thursday at 12 o'clock. I wanted to lift up a couple of the speakers. There's still like some special guests to come. Foti mentioned your representative from the Philadelphia area, Representative Boyle, several times. And he will be speaking and kicking us off, which is important for a couple of reasons. He's the ranking budget committee member. He is on Ways and Means, and very appreciatively, he is the one that helped us to secure this space for the rally and feels really strongly, obviously, about this legislation and what it would mean for Pennsylvanians and people throughout the country. So we're excited to have him. We will also be joined by Senators Ron Wyden, who is the ranking member of the Senate Finance Committee, and Senator Jeff Merkley, who is the ranking Senate member on the Budget Committee. Additionally, we're going to have Chris Murphy, who has been great about talking, Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut, who has really been great about talking about these economic issues, these programs, and what these tax cuts really mean, and why the Trump administration and its allies are pushing them so strongly. So we're excited for them. We have Congresspeople Sarah Jacobs and Sarah McBride all confirmed. And then we will also have, very importantly, folks throughout. It's not going to just be elected officials. We will have folks from across the country who are impacted by SNAP cuts or potential Medicare and Medicaid cuts, telling their stories, telling why they're in Washington, D.C., and lifting up the stories that reflects, millions of Americans. So we're really excited about that. Again, that's at 12. We will have for you, your traditional rally signs, like our great tax the rich, no tax cuts for billionaires. We will have buttons. We will also have, for folks that need it, Spanish translation and ASL. And for the folks who could not be there, I did see some people in the chat at the very beginning say that maybe you couldn't make it, but you'd love to watch it online, or you'll support it in other ways. We will have a live stream, and we'll be sharing all that information with the folks at Penn Policy, and I know that they'll get it out to you. We'll have social media content, all of the good things, but you will be able to watch from home, even if you cannot make it to DC. So we're very excited. We're expecting at least 500 people, again, from 32 states around the country. And we are so, so, so excited about the huge Pennsylvania delegation. And yeah, so that's the rally.
Hannah, thank you so much. I think we have some slides with the map too that we can share. Adrian, you want to pop those up? And Hannah, maybe you can talk us through what that looks like, or yeah. So some details here. Yeah,
I'm actually really glad that we have this one. It didn't translate quite so perfectly, so sorry that it's a little bit ugly, but neither here nor there. I do want to lift up too the thing that you see at the bottom here that says optional. We our communications team is working with national but also state press that has national reporters to be able to talk to folks around the rally if someone so chooses. So if you've got a story to tell, we're going to have people there who would like to connect you with reporters. And we're going to be recording a lot of content that can be used both now and, as Foti outlined, this fight we expect to go on for a little while. So there's those opportunities too for folks who might be interested and willing to share your stories. And if we click on the next slide, we'll be able to show you exactly where the rally is. Okay, so this is the map of the US Capitol campus. For folks who have been there before, it is huge. But our rally will be where you see that lovely big yellow X. It is right outside the Senate, or the Russell Senate office building. And then for your awareness, all the little blue stars that you see on the map are the other Senate and House office buildings. Some folks that are coming to the rally will have also been there the night before, like Arizonans, they can't get on a bus. So they might have meetings in the morning with their elected officials, and they'll be walking over. I know that your team here is working to make sure you have the best drop off for the rally. So I imagine you'll be arriving somewhere very close to that yellow X. But yeah, so happy to take any questions. Again, I know Dwayne's about to really dive in on how to sign up and participate, but thank you for letting me talk about it for a few minutes, and really, really thank you in advance for coming next week. It's going to be great to see everyone.
Wonderful. So let me, between Mark Schaefer and I, will give you some of the details. As you've been seeing, I've been dropping into the chat the link, the Mobilize link, where you can sign up. Actually later today, we're going to be releasing some of the details, but you'll be the first to hear some of these. So I already listed the locations that the buses will be picking people up. But let me say that if you would rather drive by yourself and get a group of people to go, that is great. You go ahead and do that. There are quite a number of people that we already have signed up that say, hey, Dwayne, we don't need a bus. We're just going. We are making a road trip. We are going down there. We're bringing friends, and we have things covered. You're perfectly welcome to do that. If you do need the transportation and you're able to get to Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Allentown, Bloomsburg, Harrisburg, any of those locations, it's going to be an early day. So you're going to have to get there pretty bright and early because of multiple stops to pick up. And of course, we don't want you arriving after the rally. And we want to make sure that you're there in time because DC traffic can be kind of challenging. So they are early starts, especially for the Northeast one, which has 3 stops, and the Bloomsburg one, which has 2. Philly and Pittsburgh, of course, will be a little bit longer too. Philly has the shortest distance. But anyway, we'll share some of those details with you about where those locations are. But the best way to do that is to just click on the Mobilize link, sign up. We'll send you the information on the times and the locations that you can do that. And also feel free to share that link with others because it's always more fun to come together. When you get on the bus, we'll have some things there on the bus for you. It's going to be bright and early, but we'll have snacks for you. When you get to the location, we're going to have lunch provided on us as well for folks on the bus. We'll have some activities on the bus. We will have our own signs printed up that are labeled with Pennsylvania Policy Center and Pennsylvania. So we'll be able to see ourselves in the crowd of folks that are there with our own signage. And if you like, you can make your own. We encourage you to make your own signs, but remember, you're going to be on a bus, so you don't want to bring something that's going to be in your neighbor's lap when you're doing that, right? We want to be all together well on the bus. We will also be doing a group exercise like we just did here. We'll be sharing QR codes where you can, on your way, be sending a letter to your member of Congress saying, we're heading to DC because of this. We're going to be landing there soon, and let them know that you don't want these cuts to Medicaid and SNAP in order to send money to billionaires, right? So we'll have those activities going on as well while you're on the bus and going to DC. You will need a lot of coffee, that's for sure. So, and as an example, the longest one, so the first bus is going to be available in Scranton at 4 a.m. in the morning. And then we pick up going into, that's our friends from, let me turn that off, from State Revenue Alliance calling me. See, everyone's on board with this thing. So anyway, Mark, I don't know if you had other things that you can share, but there will be a detailed email going out later today on all of those locations and start times. The other ones are much later or later than the one in Scranton, but that's the earliest that it will be. So pickup times will be somewhere between basically 4 and 6 a.m. Or so, and then we arrive at 11 o'clock. Rally starts at noon, so a little bit of time in there for us to eat our lunches. You'll be getting back around between like 7 o'clock, between 7 and 8 o'clock. All the buses should be returning. We will be returning and loading back on the bus at 3 p.m., which allows us a little bit of time, and we're working really hard to see if we might be able to get one of our legislators to come to us so we can speak with them. immediately following the rally. So those are some details. Mark, if you have some more to share, I don't know if you have stuff to drop in the chat or anything else about the logistics that we have. Mark Schaefer?
Yeah, the only other specifics I would have are the specific times for depart and return and the specific locations. I can drop those in the chat so people can see. Don't need to
Okay.
run through all of them, and I'll just drop that in the chat.
Okay, great. All right. So there's a lot of other things going on too. We saw some people that said, hey, I can't go to DC, but I want to be able to do things. So I have some things at our coworker, Jeff, our outreach and partnership director. He has some really exciting news. I know he's chafing at the bit to like share with what we have going on. So Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you, but then you have to flip it back to me so I can tell them about what's happening on Saturday, what's happening on tax day, which is a huge day. So Jeff, the mic is yours.
All right, I will flip it back to you when I am wrapped up with this. Really quickly, folks, last week, Pennsylvania found itself making political headlines, not just across the state, but around the country and frankly, even around the world. Some of you who are watching politics closely know that we had a very unusual special election last Tuesday. Took place in Lancaster County. It was to fill the seat of former very conservative Republican Senator Brian Allman, sorry, just blanked for a second there. It was a seat that was held by Republicans for nearly 140 years. And folks expected that it was probably going to remain that way. But a candidate came forward, ran in that special election. His name was James Malone. He pulled off a victory. Keep in mind, 5 months ago, this very same district went for more than 15 points in favor of Trump. And this is 5 months later. This is a very different outcome. There are a lot of very interesting things that happened in that race. He really talked about issues that matter to people, listened to people's concerns. And we're going to have him as our special guest 2 weeks from today. Third Thursdays at 1 p.m. We do our state policy action meetings. First Thursdays at 1 p.m. It's this meeting, the federal meeting. We are so excited to have Senator Malone, our newest senator in Pennsylvania, joining us. He's going to be talking about the issues that he heard about from voters, things they said they were concerned about, and what his priorities are going to be on the policy front in Harrisburg. We anticipate there will be a lot of interest in this. These meetings are limited in terms of the number of people we can get in. So please register today. We look forward to a very, very interesting conversation with Senator Malone. Thanks so much, Dwayne. Flipping back to you.
Okay, sounds good. And there he is. Adrian, right on cue. You're sharing the photo of James right there. And so be sure that you register for that. Jeff dropped the link in the chat. And so we'd like to see you on that call. It's going to be an exciting call. He's been all over the news too, right? MSNBC. He's been, really covered well. It was quite an upset and well-deserved for how hard their team worked on that campaign. So what else is happening? Well, you know what? It would not be we would be ignoring the elephant in the room if we didn't talk about what's happening on Saturday. Pennsylvania Policy Center and Pennsylvanians Together has been partnering with 5051. Remember, that's 50 states, 50 capitals, one day. They have been doing some amazing grassroots work, and we've been helping to support that work along with so many of our partners out there. And what I wanted to do was just drop, if you're not familiar with what's going on and what's happening, there are over 30 events that are happening all over the state of Pennsylvania on Saturday. There's the mobilized link, and that's just the general link. When you click on that link, I'm just going to share my screen to give you a little bit of a tip on navigating that and how easy it really is. And we utilize it here at Pennsylvania Policy Center. This is what you'll get. And there's something right up here that says filters. You click on the word filter and then search for something like, let's say, hands off. The search engine is pretty good. You just kind of like scroll down and apply the filter and pop, these things come up. Like here's hands off Scranton. Here it is again for Scranton. Here it is for Wilkes-Barre. Here it is for Stroudsburg. Now it's relevant to me because I'm in Northeast Pennsylvania. Here it is in Jim Thorpe. And you can continue to see all of these. Milford, in Binghamton, they're all over. There's over 1,000 of these that are up in the United States. It's international. People are doing it like across the globe. There's one in London. It's all over the place. And these are huge events. And they're basically saying, hands off, right? Hands off of our healthcare. Hands off of all of the things that that are happening in DC right now. And so if you're not doing anything on Saturday, I really encourage you to go to Mobilize, find one near you, make up a sign and make a day of it, or make a few hours of it at least, to get out there on the streets. This is a true grassroots movement, and it's really very timely, and I think it's really important for us to be supportive of it. Up here in Northeast Pennsylvania, Mr. Riggs, some of you know and love him. If you don't know him, he's a large, giant 12 or 15 foot fat cat. He's called Mr. Riggs because our tax system is rigged. He will be in Scranton with a special guest that has not been announced. Mark Schaefer will be speaking at the Wilkes-Barre rally, and we have folks that are supporting it all over the place. So please get out this weekend and do that. Also, tax day. This is all about taxes. We got to remember why all these cuts are happening. There's a reason why all the cuts are happening, and we can be really upset about these cuts, but there's a reason for it, and we need that through line. The reason they're doing it is to give that money to people who don't need it, to the ultra wealthy and to billionaires. That's why they're doing it. And if we can't emphasize that on tax day, I don't know when we can, right? So there are going to be events that are happening all over the state, once again on tax day. Go to Mobilize. They're not up quite yet, but a lot of them are starting to pop up now. But please mark that and look for that. They will be happening in Pittsburgh. It'll be happening in Philadelphia. It'll be happening in Harrisburg and York. It'll be happening in Bucks County. It'll be happening up in Northeast PA. Big shout out to Action Together. They're hosting 9 or 10 of those events up in all the towns and cities in Northeast Pennsylvania. And you're going to see more of these. They're going to be in State College. It's going to be in Erie. All these events are going to be coming up. Mark off tax day, because that's our day to say, no, we want families over billionaires, not billionaires over families. And that's what we're going to be doing on tax day. So please have a look out for that.